There is a dangerous illusion that rules weak minds. They believe power belongs to the loudest person in the room. They believe dominance comes from shouting, defending, reacting, and proving themselves endlessly. But Niccolò Machiavelli understood something darker about human nature. The man who reacts emotionally is already controlled by the one who provoked him. The man who constantly explains himself is silently begging for approval. And the man who cannot ignore distractions becomes a slave to every fool who demands his attention. History was not conquered by emotional men. It was conquered by cold minds who understood silence, patience, and psychological restraint. Kings did not answer every insult. Generals did not stop wars to explain their intentions. The powerful mastered one terrifying principle: never react, never explain, just ignore. Because indifference is not weakness. Indifference is power hidden in silence. Why emotional reactions give away your power the easiest way. To control a man is not through force. It is through emotion. The moment someone can make you angry, defensive, frustrated, or desperate to respond, they have already entered your mind and taken command of your behavior. This is the secret most people never understand. They think reacting proves strength, but in reality, reaction exposes slavery. A calm man chooses his actions. An emotional man becomes predictable. Look carefully at the world around you. Why do manipulators insult you? Why do narcissists provoke you? Why do weak people gossip behind your back? Because they are fishing for one thing, only your reaction. The moment you explode in anger, they win. The moment you rush to defend yourself, they gain confirmation that they touched your ego. Human beings are addicted to emotional control. They feel powerful when they can disturb your peace. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. A ruler who reacted emotionally to every criticism would appear unstable and weak before his people. But the ruler who remained silent created uncertainty, and uncertainty creates fear. People begin wondering, why is he so calm? Why is he unaffected? That silence becomes psychological dominance. Most people cannot tolerate disrespect because their identity depends on external validation. They need to be understood. They need to be liked. They need to prove themselves innocent. And this desperation becomes visible the moment pressure is applied. Watch how quickly people reveal their insecurities when criticized. Their voice changes. Their emotions rise. Their need to explain becomes uncontrollable. But the dangerous man operates differently. He understands that not every attack deserves a response. Not every insult deserves attention. Lions do not turn around when small dogs bark at them. Because true power is emotional discipline. The person who controls his emotions controls the situation. While others burn themselves with anger, he studies the room quietly. While others lose themselves trying to win arguments, he preserves his energy and watches people expose themselves naturally. The cold truth is this: emotional reactions are confessions. Anger confesses insecurity. Defensiveness confesses fear. Overreaction confesses weakness. And manipulators can smell these emotions instantly. The more emotionally reactive you become, the easier you are to control, predict, and destroy psychologically. The hidden weakness behind over-explaining yourself: there is a silent weakness that destroys more people than failure itself. It is the uncontrollable urge to explain yourself. Weak men believe that if they talk long enough, defend themselves hard enough, and justify every action perfectly, the world will finally understand them. But Machiavelli understood a darker truth about human nature. The more you explain yourself, the less powerful you appear. Think carefully about this. Powerful people rarely rush to defend their decisions. Kings never stop their armies to explain their intentions to peasants. Wolves do not explain themselves to sheep. Only insecure people feel the desperate need to be understood by everyone around them. And manipulators know this very well. That is why they provoke questions, accusations, and misunderstandings, not to discover truth, but to watch you emotionally expose yourself. The moment you begin over-explaining, you reveal anxiety. You reveal fear of judgment. You reveal dependence on approval. Every extra sentence becomes evidence that you are emotionally affected. And once people realize they can force explanations out of you, they gain psychological leverage over your mind. Look at how society trains people from childhood. Explain yourself, defend your intentions, prove you are not wrong, Slowly, people become addicted to seeking permission from others. They fear being misunderstood more than they fear losing their dignity. So they waste enormous amounts of energy trying to control opinions that can never truly be controlled. But the dangerous man understands something most people never learn. Explanations do not silence critics, they feed them. The more you defend yourself, the more people search for cracks in your words. The more you try to prove innocence, the guiltier you appear. Human psychology is cruel in this way. Confidence is often judged not by how much you say, but by how little you feel forced to say. Silence creates mystery. Silence creates authority. When someone attacks you and you refuse to explain yourself, it unsettles them deeply. Because now they cannot read your emotions, they cannot measure your insecurity, they cannot predict your next move. And uncertainty is psychologically terrifying to people who seek control. This is why powerful individuals speak carefully and sparingly. They do not chase validation. They do not panic when misunderstood. They understand that public opinion changes like the wind, but composure creates permanent psychological strength. While ordinary people exhaust themselves trying to explain every detail of their lives, the disciplined mind remains calm, unreadable, and emotionally untouchable. Silence, as a psychological weapon of dominance, silence is one of the most misunderstood weapons in human psychology. Weak people see silence as fear. They assume the quiet man has nothing to say, nothing to defend, and nothing to fight for. But Machiavelli understood that silence, when used correctly, becomes a form of invisible domination. Because the man who speaks less forces others to reveal more. And the one who reveals less always controls the game. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. The moment tension enters a conversation, they rush to fill the emptiness with explanations, emotions, or nervous words. Why? Because silence creates pressure. It forces people to confront uncertainty. And human beings fear uncertainty more than almost anything else. This is why silence becomes psychologically powerful. It places emotional "we" right on the other person while you remain calm and unreadable. Imagine someone insults you publicly, expecting anger, defense, or retaliation. But instead, you simply stare at them calmly without reacting. Suddenly, the balance of power changes. Now they become uncomfortable. Now they question themselves. They begin wondering if their attack failed, if you know something they do not, or if they have lost control over the situation. Your silence becomes a mirror reflecting their own insecurity back at them. This is why powerful leaders throughout history mastered controlled silence. They understood that talking too much exposes intentions, emotions, and weaknesses. Silence, however, creates mystery, and mystery creates authority. People naturally fear what they cannot fully understand. A loud man reveals his entire strategy within minutes. A silent man forces others to guess, and guessing creates psychological tension. Manipulators also hate silence because it blocks emotional access. I survive by provoking reactions, extracting explanations, and controlling conversations. But when you remain silent, their tools stop working. They cannot manipulate emotions they cannot reach. Silence denies them emotional fuel. It starves their ego. Notice how weak people constantly seek attention. They speak endlessly because they fear being ignored. But the disciplined mind understands that words lose value when overused. The more calmly you speak, the more weight your words carry. The more selectively you respond, the more seriously people take your presence. Silence is not passive. Silence is calculated restraint. It is the ability to remain emotionally composed while others lose control around you. In a world addicted to noise, emotional outbursts, and endless explanations, the quiet man becomes deeply intimidating because nobody can easily read, predict, or manipulate him. How ignoring people creates fear, obsession, and respect. One of the darkest truths about human psychology is this: people value what they cannot easily control. The moment you become too available, too reactive, or too eager to respond, your value begins to decrease in their eyes. But when you master the art of ignoring, something strange happens. People who once overlooked you suddenly become obsessed with your attention. Those who tried to provoke you begin questioning their own importance, and those who expected emotional access to your mind start feeling powerless in your presence. Machiavelli understood that attention itself is a form of currency. Every time you react emotionally to criticism, drama, or disrespect, you are handing someone your mental energy. You are silently telling them, "You are important enough to disturb my peace." But when you ignore foolishness completely, you communicate something far more powerful. You show that they are beneath your emotional investment. This is why ignoring people often creates more fear than confrontation. Arguments give people engagement. Hatred still gives them significance. But indifference is terrifying because it makes people feel invisible. Human beings crave emotional acknowledgement, even if it comes through conflict. That is why many manipulators intentionally create drama. They do not care whether you love them or hate them. They only care that you react. The moment you refuse to participate, their psychological control begins collapsing. Suddenly they become restless. They overthink your silence. They replay conversations in their head. They wonder why you are unaffected. And the less attention you give them, the more desperate they become to regain your focus. Look carefully at powerful individuals throughout history. They were never accessible to everyone emotionally. They understood the power of distance. Mystery increases perceived value, scarcity creates obsession, and emotional self-control creates respect. People naturally chase what withdraws from them emotionally because the human ego cannot tolerate feeling unimportant. Weak people mistake ignoring for cowardice because they are addicted to emotional battles. They believe every insult deserves revenge, every disagreement deserves an argument, and every attack deserves a response. But the disciplined mind understands that attention is precious. Not everyone deserves access to your emotions, your energy, or your peace. Sometimes the strongest move is not defeating your enemy publicly. Sometimes the strongest move is making them realize they no longer exist in your mental world. Because nothing wounds the ego more deeply than irrelevance. And nothing makes a person more psychologically powerful than the ability to walk away emotionally untouched, while others desperately fight for attention they can no longer reach. Becoming emotionally untouchable in a manipulative world. The modern world is built on emotional manipulation. Every day, people compete for your attention, your anger, your fear, and your validation. Social media provokes outrage. Toxic people provoke insecurity. Manipulators provoke emotional reactions to gain control over your mind. And most people walk through life completely unaware that their emotions are being controlled like puppets on invisible strings. Machiavelli understood that the person who masters himself becomes impossible to dominate, because true power does not begin with controlling others. It begins with controlling your own emotional responses. A man who cannot govern his anger will eventually be ruled by those who can trigger it. A man who cannot tolerate criticism will forever remain dependent on approval. And a man who reacts emotionally to every attack becomes exhausted fighting battles that were designed only to distract him. To become emotionally untouchable, you must first understand one brutal truth. Not everything deserves your energy. Weak minds react to everything because they crave significance. They need to win every argument, answer every insult, and defend every misunderstanding. But powerful individuals operate differently. They conserve emotional energy like a weapon. They choose carefully where to invest attention because they understand that attention shapes reality. This is why emotional discipline terrifies manipulative people. When they insult you and receive no reaction, they lose psychological control. When they spread gossip and you remain calm, they become frustrated. When they attempt to provoke insecurity and you continue moving forward unaffected, their tactics collapse. Because manipulators survive through emotional access. Once you deny them that access, they become powerless. But emotional detachment does not mean becoming cold-hearted or lifeless. It means becoming disciplined enough that your emotions no longer control your decisions. It means developing the ability to observe chaos without becoming consumed by it. The emotionally untouchable man still feels anger, betrayal, and disappointment. The difference is that he refuses to let those emotions dictate his behavior. Most people live in permanent reaction mode. They wake up reacting to notifications, reacting to opinions, reacting to drama, reacting to disrespect. Their peace